Salutations, everybody, and welcome to the Velocity of Now. I believe this is episode number 28 already. It's February 9th, I think, 2014. And I want to welcome you to the show here on the Type 1 Radio Network. As usual, Steve is doing the production, setting up the songs and everything. So thank you very much for that, Steve, and thank you again, Type 1 Network, for allowing me to have a voice. To get these things that are on my mind off my chest, or whatever they say. My website is www.thomassheridanarts.com. If you can support me in any way you can, I prefer if you bought a book, that'd be the best way. But even sharing pages is great from my website. Just get the stuff out there, get the energies flowing, and do what you can to keep the ball rolling, because it is an interesting time. It's a time of flux. That was a word I was thinking about the other day. Some friends of mine were putting together an art exhibition a few years ago, and we were applying for government funding, and I came up with the idea for the name of the exhibition to be Flux, F-L-U-X, because I thought that represented the changes in Ireland, the changes in the art, and the changes of like artists living in a sort of an unfashionable part of the country, away from the big galleries and so on. And maybe in the margins, in the hinterland, that's where the real story of creative intention was being written. And then after a while, it kind of petered out, and then I jumped out of the project because I didn't want any government money being spent on my art. I mean, if they wanted to buy a painting, that's one thing, but I didn't like the idea of giving a proposal to a government in order to get funding. And then there was like a big cutback in funding from the Arts Council here, and all the artists marched in Dublin saying, don't cut back the funding to the artists. And I, being the big fucking mouth that I am, I posted on Facebook, if you're a real artist, you don't need government and funding. You create art for its own sake and not to be on some kind of dole for artists. And of course, that was the end of my reputation among the art school. But types, but I don't give a shit. That's not why I create art. It's not for that reason at all. Now, it's a funny old time. Oh, by the way, on the website, no, sorry, not on the website, on www.thomassheridanarts.com, if you click the window up at the top that says blog, there's now thanks to Nick, there's now a Type 1 automatic radio player in the upper right-hand corner, and pretty snazzy it is too. And the other night there, I just switched it on, and while I was working on my website or doing browsing, it was playing Nick's Sonic's Smoke Break music, which was like a really good music show, and then the other shows automatically line up. So check that out. It's a pretty cool thing. And if you have a website and you want to put on a radio network that's actually, it doesn't claim to represent the people, but it actually gives a voice to people who have something to say in order that you can develop your own voice rather than you being dictated to, stick it on your website. Feel free to do that. The code is there. Now, it's been a funny, weather-wise, that it's really doing my head in. I had an experience I haven't had in many years. This massive storm that's moving over these islands right now, I think it's just past the north of Scotland, and it's out towards Orkney. It's heading out towards the Orkney part of the Orkney Islands. It's going towards Norway now. And It's weird. It's very weird. It's just like we're getting battered so badly, rain-wise, and it's coming in waves. But for the first time in years, I found myself looking at this very good website that someone posted to my Facebook wall, and I think it was called Earth.com or Earth something. And it shows real-time weather information from around the whole planet. It's very beautiful to actually look at. And it shows the wind currents and the precipitation currents and the severities of these winds moving in a kind of a fractal real time. And it's kind of pretty. You can look at like the precipitation moving up from the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, and moving over the top of Russia, that kind of thing. And you see how weather patterns are affected there. But anyway, just by sheer synchronicity, as someone had posted on the wall, the eye of the storm is directly over Northern Ireland, and I zoomed in a little closer, and it wasn't. It was right over here where I live, up in the northwest. So I went outside, and sure enough, just like I didn't expect it to look like this, but I was in the middle of a perfectly blue hole, which was the eye of the storm. That the circumference was probably about 10 miles, I'd say, and you could see airplanes flying over the hole. And all around the circumference of the hole was just jet black clouds, just in turbulence. And it was really amazing, but it was kind of a hard thing to photograph because there was trees in the way. But what struck me about it was being in the center of this vortex. And you're all struck for a second because you realize you're at the center of a vortex that stretches from the Caribbean up to the Arctic and all the way down the west coast of Spain towards Africa, and you just realize that you are in the middle of that massive vortex. But what was amazing was how incredibly cold it was. It was dumping cold into the center of it, and also it was incredibly still. There was no wind, and then of course the storm moves a bit to the north. It moved actually to the northeast and headed across the sea to Cumbria in England. And it was just, the wind and the rain was just incredible. It was like going sideways. And we've been battered on these islands now all winter long. It's been incredible. I've never seen so many winter storms. And the flooding is definitely getting worse. Now, Cork City does get flooded now and again because it's basically a low-lying city, and the city centre is on an island between two big rivers. So, and they're tidal rivers as well. So when the sea levels or the ocean levels swell and you get heavy rains, the rivers burst their banks and flood the city centre. And people are showing videos having a laugh, doing things like kayaking towards the ATM and cash out, and also swimming in it. Which is, it's kind of like a good way of looking at it rather than being in fear and terror of it, but it's wrecking businesses, and it's got to be depressing. But the one thing that I'm really freaked out by is Somerset in England. How that county has been absolutely battered, non-stop, and the flooding is incredible. And it just doesn't seem right to me. It's like one of those things. That'll be the theme of tonight's show. When you hear or see something and you think to yourself, nah, there's something not right here. So that's a theme of tonight's show. Nah, something not right here. You know, a gut feeling that you're being sold a sack of shit. Now, actually, gut feeling is an interesting thing because you do have like a kind of a brain in your intestines, and that brain is where you get your gut feeling from. You actually think with your stomach. But anyway, so I'm watching this thing about Somerset, and I'm saying, is it just me, or does it look like they deliberately designed the place so that it would fill with water? Because what you can see is, and I'm not kidding you, they actually showed like aristocrats' homes that had flood like barriers, like big stately homes that were not flooded, and yet all around the farms and the houses, they were fucked, and yet the railway lines were okay. Those kinds of things. It was almost like they gave planning over the years, knowing that the poorer people or the working people or the middle class people would be living in a flood zone in an area that was prone to flooding. It just seemed that way. And then when the floods came, well, these people would be screwed, and they'd probably not want to stay there because the quality of their life is affected. Very hard. It's really difficult to run a farm in a flooded area. What happens is the nutrients are all washed out of the soil. That's what, unless you have some kind of a system like they have in Holland where they let a bit of seawater in, and then all the fish and the shellfish, they actually fertilize the water. But that's a controlled system through dikes. But if you if you're in an area that floods all the time like that, what happens is when the water subsides, it washes all the nutrients out of the soil into the rivers and then out to the sea. So it's really hard to be a farmer because you're constantly having to put, phosphates back into the soil in order to try and get natural grass growth if you're a dairy farmer. And God help if you're growing fruit and vegetables, because that's much more hungry than like grazing land. And you're going to be like, it's just not going to be economically viable to constantly putting phosphates and nutrients in the soil if it's going to get washed away all the time. So I really, I don't like what's happening in Somerset. It's not. I've got friends down there, and it's like, it's just something not right about that flooding. There just isn't. And there's some. I mean, Ian Crane, Crane posted a thing today that it was something to do with Agenda 21, that they're deliberately cleaning out the land in order to get people to live in the cities, but also to make the land, if there's less people living on the land, or you can buy it up at, at below retail or below agricultural prices, it's better for the frackers, because then they can go and attack the land with the fracking machines. And I don't know. I just don't know. It just seems to me there's lots of flat areas in the UK. There's lots of flat areas in England. It just seems very strange how one county seems to have been designed so it floods. And so, I don't know what's going on there. It's very, very odd. But anyway, it's been a really crappy winter that way. Now, it hasn't been cold in terms of ice and snow. There's been almost none of that. But there's been a lot of precipitation. And you know what's going to happen. All the reservoirs are going to fill up. There's going to be, all the aquifers will fill up. There'll be plenty of groundwater. And as soon as we have 3 days of sunshine, they'll declare a drought. That's exactly what will happen. 3 days of sunshine and a drought will be declared. And in places where they have hosepipe bans, you'll have a hosepipe ban, so you can't water your flowers or anything. And that's what this is the gaslighting thing is. Again, they create systems. I mean, if these engineers are real engineers, they should have their qualifications taken away from them. They create systems that actually don't prevent flooding, but the same systems don't retain water for agricultural or other uses later on. So it's almost like they design these places, create the flood barriers, create the drainage systems and the drainage schemes and programs for no other reason than the place gets flooded during winter and it's dry during summer. And you go to places like Spain, in like the south of Spain, around Cordoba and the countryside all around there, Andalusia. People live up on the mountains where it rains like maybe 2 days a year, and they have systems built into their own homes and into the villages where all the water is collected underground or in aquifers. They actually design the roofs of their houses to act as if they're big rain collectors, the flat roofs. And then all the rain is captured in 1 or 2 days a year, and that's the rain for the whole year. It's good, and you don't, and you see how good they are with agriculture. Same in the south of Italy. It's not all wells. There's a lot of water management goes on. It's not all necessarily just sticking tapping a well in the ground and pumping the water out. There's also management systems that have to be developed over time. How come these great engineers that are employed by public bodies can't do that in places like Somerset and Cork, but they can do it? Farmers and people who live on the side of mountains in Spain can do it. And their rainfall, when they get it in Spain and places like southern Italy, is absolutely torrential. And yet they have water management systems. We don't. So maybe there is something to it. Maybe there is something to this idea of Agenda 21, cleaning out the land, depopulating it, having it just for industry and exploitation and moving everyone into mega cities. And there already are many plans around the place showing these mega cities of the future. And they're not particularly. See, this is why I rejected immediately the Venus Project from day one, because I felt that the Venus Project was Agenda 21 through the back door. I really did. It didn't present anything other than soulless, vapid, vacuous, cold environments. And you ever notice that all the models and all the illustrations of the new urban areas never had any or very few people in them, and it seemed to be a very kind of security gated community vibe about everything. And humans are moved off the land, and then they're moved onto the city, kind of floating or on the water cities. And then the people, ooh, it sounds so great, ooh, it's great, ooh. Well, there because you were programmed by science fiction to think that was the future. And you were programmed further by the Venus Project to move into Agenda 21. Cold, soulless machine cities run by computers where you don't have an ounce of freedom. You think you have no freedom now. Well, you've seen nothing yet. There was an IBM pilot program on smart commuting cities. The story was covered on the BBC, and the way it was sold was pure propaganda. And they said, yeah, you can find on your apps, on your Android or your iPhone, what time the next bus or train is due. But the whole system isn't integrated into one whole. This is why we need a smart system. And then the BBC report goes to Dublin, and they say they've managed to solve this problem in Dublin because IBM has integrated the city's entire public transport system into one smart system where you don't have multiple apps. It all works in tandem, and the transport operators can then tell, to move a certain bus in if a tram is later, and all this kind of crap, little cartoons. And then they showed the IBM graphic, the IBM pilot graphic. Now remember, the IBM were the computer system for the SS Eisengruppen, which was actually held the Holocaust and the extermination of millions of people, Jews, Poles, Gypsies, Russians, troops, was done in the Eastern Wars. So here they are again, IBM. And they showed like buses going through Dublin, and you see like the little graphic, and beside it says X a number, which would be like you, right? So your name is like Paddy McGinty, and you're Paddy McGinty. You work for a store in central Dublin, and your boss can type into this IBM smart computer, and it can tell where you are. So if you met a girl the night before and you were having a nice time and you didn't want to rush right to work, you said, the buses or the trains are late. Well, he could actually type into this smart system and see that you're banging this girl you met and where she is and who she is. Now, you think that's freedom? And that's what things like the Venus Project and all these when you hear smart economy, what you got to think is slave economy. Slave economy. That's what smart economy is. That's what smart cities are. Slave cities. And so you had all these awake people, as usual. The Venus Project, it sounds great. We have to do it. We have to do it because, well, the system now is so broken, we have to have a change. Yeah, sure, right. So, the Weimar Republic was broken, so the change was Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. The Tsarist Imperial Russia was broken, so the change that was needed was the Bolsheviks. And then you go to everywhere else. Just because the system is bad now doesn't mean you need a new system to replace it. You can go no contact with organizational structures, just like you can go no contact with a toxic person or a bad job or a bad situation. That's why I think I'm an anarchist at heart, because I believe that ultimately, if you strip down what anarchy is to its main component, anarchy is faith in human decency. That's what anarchy is. Faith in human decency. But anyway, this whole Venus Project Agenda 21, it wouldn't surprise me if this is what they're up to. They program it. They're always but at the same time too, a lot of programming doesn't come true, because if you look at these videos of the World's Fair in New York in 1939 or 65, and they show like, House of the Future, or City of the Future. None of it ever really comes true. Some of it does actually. That's the stuff, but generally they give a sci-fi version of the future that looks amazing because it looks like the Jetsons. Yeah, that's right, Steve. They give you a sci-fi version of the future that looks amazing. It looks fantastic. And then you have to feel that that's where you belong because you've been coached by science fiction to believe the future is that. So the future has to be this antiseptic, business-friendly model that bureaucrats can run and get huge salaries, and you're a slave to the system. I mean, you think about that. Why is the future always portrayed as a technocratic utopia? Why couldn't you have science fiction that would portray the future as something rustic, agrarian, something like a modern version of the Hobbit's village, whatever that was called, in that book, where people live in sustainable green communities with lovely farms and gardens built into hills and wooden buildings, and everything is designed and in such a way it blends with nature, it's in harmony. No. You have to be living in your pod.
Brains are fluoridated.
In your flying saucer pod.
Sure, there's nothing.
The Shire, why don't they give us images like that? Why don't they give us nice images of futures where there could even
Irish
be
brains are
similar to the houses we live in now, but maybe something better like
you
gardening,
are a sitting duck for the politicians and their crew.
Cycle lanes and walking lanes.
Irish brains are fluoridated.
Over the house. What?
Sure, the banker and the politician think it's great.
I can remember when I was a little kid. I found a box of contraceptive pills.
Irish brains are fluoridated.
Thing that you turn and went click, 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 click. So you would actually get the pill.
Yes, let me tell you about it. So they put the fluoride in the water. It ruins your health. It destroys your mind. Makes you a fucking lunatic. Because you vote for the same assholes over and over again. You get the diseases that only stop at the border, and you never ask yourself why. Why? And the reason is this: because you cannot think straight, because they put that shit in your brain. When Irish brains are fluoridated,
and that was shown in 1984 by George Orwell.
Nothing you can't do. But when Irish brains are fluoridated, motherfucker. You are truly screwed.
In that scene in the cafe where he's talking to his mind, and the guy's talking about how the pros aren't human, and then he turns around and says the pros are the only humans left in this world. The proles are the only ones left in this world. And the proles were free. The inner party members weren't free. The proles were outside the system. They weren't taken care of by the system, but at the same time, too, they weren't slaves by it. And life was crap and shit everywhere. When those rocket bombs came in, they could easily kill prole or inner party member alike. So, when you're watching the storms and when you're looking at the rainy skies, once you have a house of some kind over your head, that's good enough. But you don't need a plastic pod or trapped in some massive city where you're in a smart economy where you have no freedom. Because what we're going to get is 1984, not as Airstrip 1, but we're going to get 1984 as the Venus Project style environment. Antiseptic, cold, and devoid of any kind of soul that would feed and create the human condition. And here's the first song of the night. It's Original Sin by In Excess. And there's a reason why I asked for Original Sin by In Excess to be played tonight. As I said, the theme of tonight's show is, when I heard about it, it didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right. That's the theme of the show tonight. Something didn't feel right at the time. Well, Michael Hutchence' death was one of them. It just didn't seem right at the time. Now, as you know, I have an interest in the deaths of celebrities that don't make sense. Usually only if I care about the music. Otherwise, I don't really have a big interest in it. There's an article on a website about Bon Scott from AC/DC. His death never made any sense to me either. Especially, so I'll post the links to that article from my blog in any of these players or any of the web, YouTube or anything connected with this. The circumstances surrounding his death, at the very least, seemed like manslaughter to me. If he was left in a car to freeze to death, and even the guy who brought him back to his home that nobody knew, nobody in AC/DC were aware of him, he vanished off the face of the earth. Nobody knows who he was, where he came from, and how he became instrumental in the death of Bon Scott of AC/DC. Now, when you have these kinds of sudden, shocking deaths, there's often a kind of gaslighting happens. And the gaslighting is designed to destroy the reputation of that person at the time it happens. So on one level, you're shocked by what happened to the person, that they're dead. You can't believe it, especially if you were a fan of the band. And I wasn't a huge fan of In Excess, but I really thought they were an excellent band, and I thought he was a phenomenal singer. And so they destroy the reputation on two levels. It's almost like they put a death course upon them. This is why the mafia would whack their enemies and then do it in such a way that it would humiliate them. So they would just kill them in two levels. They would first kill them physically, and then the second level would be to kill their reputation. So it was a double kind of murder. And there's a precedent all through history for this. Renate Müller, the beautiful and sexy German movie star of the 1930s, who was having sex with Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a wild ladies' man, by the way. That stuff about him not being sexually adequate was all made up by the OSS and the American military to try and... That was all Freudian psychologists invented. He was banging all the starlets in the German film world at the time. But one of them was Renate Müller. And I believe personally something happened to her in a sex magic ritual with Adolf Hitler in a hotel in Berlin. And he called over the Gestapo and they threw her out the window to make it look like a suicide. And Germans were shocked. You know, this beloved film star, this beautiful actress, had been murdered or apparently committed suicide. But then they double killed her by saying she was a drug addict and a prostitute and all this other stuff. So it's the old thugs and gangs. When they murder, they kill on two levels. First the reputation. First the actual death, and then the reputation. And when Michael Hutchence died, I remember, first of all, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. Because I'd seen a TV special of In Excess playing in the US. And they were on a world tour, and they never sounded any better. They always had that kind of funky and rock and roll element. But on this tour, the last tour he did with them in America, that they were actually doing all over the world, they were on fire. They sounded like a metal band or something. They were really heavy, really tight, really intense, and really up for it. They didn't sound like a band who'd been around 20 years or so. They sounded like a band who it just kicked off. They had that hunger in them. So that never made any sense to me. The other thing that never made any sense to me was that he had just had a baby, and by all accounts seemed to be quite happy in family life with Paula Yates. the former girlfriend of Bob Geldof, wife of Bob Geldof. Now, Paula Yates is an interesting woman. She was the host of a TV show called The Tube, and that's actually where she met him. And they developed. She left Bob Geldof for him, but her own life story is kind of interesting as well, and tragic and short as it was. She was the daughter, the illegitimate daughter of a TV presenter, Huey Green, who used to do an opportunity knock show, like a talent show. It's the X Factor show of its day. Very big, huge ratings. And she never understood why she always seemed to have an easy ride in life in this show business. It wasn't until later on she found out that because of her father's power in show business, although she didn't know him and he didn't acknowledge her as his daughter, doors opened for her, which is very interesting. It tells you something too. Anyway, the reason why I'm bringing this up now is there was a story appeared in the paper yesterday. It was actually an Australian paper called news.com.au, and it made me think about back to that time, and it made me think about the individuals and the people involved since, and what a dirty business showbiz is, and how we can't assume that it's not being run by mafia thugs, and these mafia thugs could be other celebrities with incredible political and business power for some reasons we don't fully know. Anyway, the story headline is In Excess singer Michael Hutchence' hauntingly prophetic words days before his death. And the article says, Michael Hutchence battled many demons, but for the first time he felt close to winning the war. And does that sound like a guy who's on his way out? The quote starts off with a quote by him. It says, I have dealt with many demons in my life, but nothing compares to what I've had to face over the past few years. Hutchence told me over the phone in what would be his last interview. It would be so easy for me to say that I hate what I've become, but then what I've become, certainly in the public eye, I had no control over. I don't like that. Now that's interesting. He's already alluding to the fact that his image and his name is being trashed in the media and he can't control it. It concerns me a great deal that every move I make is looked at, photographed and made into gossip. Some fucking soundbite that doesn't resemble the truth. Hutchence had called to promote a homecoming tour with In Excess. It was November 18th, 1987, and he was about to board a flight from Los Angeles to Sydney. And then there's a picture of him and Paul Yates and the baby, and they look like a very happy, nice, regular couple. And this is right before he died, and 4 days later, he took his own life in a Sydney hotel. Upbeat about coming home, the open and obliging frontman, as a lot of people said he was a very nice guy, broadened our interview to include his lover, British broadcaster Paula Yates. Pride at their daughter, Heavenly Hirana Tiger Lily, stupid name as usual, and the succeeding contempt for Yates' former husband, Sir Bob Geldof. Geldof and Yates, who had 3 children together, split in 1995, a year after her affair with the Australian rocker was uncovered. That rift sparked a vicious slagging match and bitter custody battle. In our interview, he was increasingly angry and hurt at the picture the British press painted of him, especially after his fleeing and subsequent relationship with Yates. I'd say it was much worse for Paula, but I'm a realist. I just do my best to confront the things, and I hope to come out of it stronger and wiser and a better person, he told me. The truth has hardly ever survived in our case. I get to see some of what is written, hear what is said. I try not to, because some of it, no, most of it, is hurtful, and it does me no good to think that it is out there. I hate the fact that people's perceptions view, Lord's perceptions, folk, is just fodder. Every move you make is just used to sell newspapers. I don't want to be exposed like that all the time. I don't want to be known as someone who's just a shallow soundbite. I've worked too long and too hard for that. I've always just carried on my life the way I see fit. If that ruffles feathers and it becomes tabloid fodder, then so be it. I'm not going to lock myself away or change my lifestyle to suit somebody else's set of rules. I think that's immoral. People should just remember I'm a musician, I'm a singer, and that's it. But you're not allowed to be just who you are in the modern world. This is me here ad-libbing. We have to remember that. I always say to people, well, all I ever really want from a celebrity is great music, great acting, and whatever, great comedy, great dancing, or whatever they do, and that's enough. Their private lives don't interest me. I don't care. I only want the art. I only want the creative intention of that individual. I only want the talent. I don't care about anything else. I never have. I mean, I've seen nearly all my favourite bands. And, all the bands I've ever loved, I've seen them all. And in a million years, I have no desire to actually run up and meet them and tell them how wonderful they are. That's all. I mean, that's one thing, what's his name? Neil Peart from Rush is correct about. He refuses to meet fans because he said when he was a music fan, he never bothered the bands. The music was enough. And then he gets a bad name for that by being called arrogant and snotty. But he's not. He's right. All we want from them is the music, is the comedy, is the acting, and so on. But we live in an age where the lords of perception have made us believe that we seek this other stuff too. That it's celebrity plus, it's art plus, it's individual plus. Now it's been going on for a long time. It really began with people like Frida Kahlo. She wasn't just a painter. She was a painter, and her private life and her political life became bigger than her actual superb artwork. And what happens is, when this mythology, the Lord's perception take these mythologies and they blow them out of control, the memory or the connection towards what these people should really be remembered for has been severed. I mean, I don't think anyone is ever going to actually think about U2's music ever again because of Bono's, activism. No one's ever going to think gladly about Bob Geldof's music ever again because of his stuff, because his music was crap. Anyway, back to the article. He continued, I'm not complaining about the life I've got. I'm a dad. I sing, I travel, I get into most of the clubs for free. I have freedom, and freedom gives me a certain amount of power. Then eerily, he says, I can lose all of this whenever I want to. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to kill himself. That just means he can walk away from... You see, the article is gaslighting a little bit here. He wasn't saying I can just kill myself. He's just saying I could stop and get out of the music business anytime I want. But if you're somebody's... If he was going around LA saying to people that I'm getting out of the music business, I'm done, I want to raise a family, well, what you're really saying to lots of people is I'm cutting off your gravy train. That's what I believe happened to Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix told his manager he was giving up. He was like, you're going to move out of the music business, or he was going to go to America, or something like that. Next thing you know, he's dead with 2 bottles of wine in his lungs. So the article kind of gaslights you a little bit there. That doesn't mean he necessarily going to mean he's kill himself. Earlier that month, Hutchence had met with major studio and film and indie filmmakers in New York and Los Angeles to resurrect his acting career. You see, that's what he really meant. He was going to go try acting instead of music. Anyway, you've ever seen that film, Dogs in Space? It's very good. It's kind of like a mixture of the story of his first band and the Bertie Party, the Nick Cave band. And if you haven't seen Dogs in Space, it's actually a very excellent film, and it's actually quite funny in a lot of parts as well. But he was in that as just a kid. And he was very good now, although he didn't do much, but he played the part right. So does that sound like if he was meeting people to resurrect his acting career, does that sound like he was about to kill himself? In that time, Hutchence did a cameo role in Limp, a low-budget movie shot in Seattle. He auditioned for the part, got it, and played a jaded record company executive. It was directed by a hotshot kid, this 26-year-old guy, and his energy just seeing how this guy works with ideas. It inspired me to work in films again, he told me. Again, does that sound like a guy who's about to throw a towel in? Hutchence was excited by the rise of quality independent film in Australia and set up meetings with local filmmakers during the INXS tour. I'm the biggest fan of anything Australian, especially when I'm away from home, he told me. I just rant and rave because I know what it takes to get out there on the world stage. Hutchinson was in love, and he had not discussed his marriage with Yeats. And then he had a picture of Kylie Minogue going to the funeral. Every year some columnist tells me we are going to get married somewhere. Last year it was Queensland. The year before it was Italy, he told me. Marriage is a very personal thing, and to deny it, well, you don't want to deny it because it sounds like you don't want to do it. Did Hutchins want to do it? To be honest, yes, he replied. I think there's a part of me that truly wants it, but in reality we haven't even discussed it. Some gossip columnists just think it's pretty funny to tell me when we should. After Hutchinson's death, an understandably distraught Yeats struggled to cope. In September 2002, she was found dead, lying in her London home. This was another one that was one of those things. It didn't feel right at the time. In September 2000, she was found dead in her London home from a heroin overdose. Geldof took foster care of Tiger Lily. Now, you see, that's not his child. This is what really set off. Did not set off, and she was found dead by her kid. This did not really set off. This really set off my alarm bells at that point. Geldof had no right to that child. He had no biological right to that child. Yet he took it off Hutchinson's parents, who were very angry about it. It was almost like the ultimate insult to Michael Hutchence, and yet at the time, Geldof, the ultimate self-publicist and the ultimate saint, portrayed it as what a great man to step in and raise a child of the man who took his wife. I don't believe that for a minute. Geldof took custody of the Tiger Lily so she could be raised with her older half-sister. He formally adopted Tiger Lily in 2007. Hutchins, caught in the vitriol between Geldof and Yeats, once described Sir Bob as an evil man, and said the public had been fooled into siding with Saint Bob. Now let me read that line again. Hutchins, caught in the vitriol between Geldof and Yeats, once described Sir Bob as an evil man, and said the public had been fooled into siding with Saint Bob. He told me it's easy to contrast a convenient one, Saint Bob and Wild Rock Boy. You pick the people you pick the one the people are going to believe. One day the truth will be told, Hutchins sighed. Did he want to give his side of the truth for our interview? No, he said flatly. The ones who lie should be made to tell the truth. According to the coroner's report, Hutchins called Geldof twice in the early hours of November 22nd, 1997, begging Sir Bob to let Yeats bring her children to Australia. Geldof told authorities Hutchins' tone was abusive, hectoring and threatening. A desperate and distraught Hutchins placed further calls and left voicemail messages with his former girlfriend Michelle Bennett and manager Martha Troop. Bennett rushed to the hotel but was unable to rouse Hutchins by knocking loudly on the door and called repeatedly. At 11:50 a.m., a hotel maid found him dead and naked behind the door to his room. He had apparently hanged himself with his own belt. Later that week, Hutchins was optimistic about being able to telling the truth his way. Are you comfortable in your skin? He asked him, building bridges. Some days I'm everything that I hate. There's nothing that the truth won't survive. In essence, Hutchins' songs let him have the last word. That I can create, that I can write, that I can express, Hutchins told me. That is the light at the end of the tunnel. That is how you win battles. Now, when he died, what the newspapers reported was that he'd been found dead with his ex-girlfriend naked in the room. And she wasn't in the room. She had got this call and it was never fully resolved what he was actually saying. She rushed to the hotel room and found him with the maid, dead and naked with a belt around him. Now why would you, and then the story then came out that he died from autoerotic asphyxiation, which is where you bring yourself close to strangling yourself during orgasm in order to increase the orgasm. And sometimes it does go wrong. But also a lot of that is an urban legend in many ways. And why would a guy like him, who was distraught, trying to get a family together basically, kill himself? And look at the person he calls. I mean, it's very easy for me to speculate that there was something very dodgy going on here. But the fact that both he and his wife are both dead from suicide, and he was killed twice, of course, because the first time he was killed via the actual death, however that happened. It's only speculation how he actually died. And the second time by the disgusting stories they put in the paper that this drug addict, and he did have a drug problem, but so what? That doesn't mean he was going to kill himself. And with a drug problem, he would kill himself in a perverted manner, with no regard for his wife and kids as daughter. And in his last moments, he was a loony who was out of control, who was harassing Bob Geldof. You think to yourself, why would he be like that? Well, why would he do that? It makes no sense. And at the time, it was one of those things, like I said, when you hear it, you say to yourself, it doesn't sound right. And I think that's the calling card of so many things and news stories. If it doesn't sound right at the time, a lot of people said this about 9/11, in fact, millions, that when they were watching on TV, it didn't feel right to them. It didn't feel right to them because something inside them, perhaps the background perception way of seeing, alerted them to the fact that what they were seeing with their own eyes wasn't real. Apparently we have a caller called Polywolf4. Is the caller still there, Steve? Hello, Polly, are you there? Polly the caller, are you on the line?
She should be unmuted also.
Yeah, maybe she got fed up. Are you there, Polly?
Yeah, it's not Polly, it's Tom. Can you hear me?
Hey, Tom Wolf. Hey.
Yeah.
How's it going, man?
All right, this is the first time I listened to your show, and we were just figuring out how to talk to you if we wanted to. I didn't realise you were going to call us. So, listen, man, I'm loving what you're saying. I'm just sitting there by my fire and I'm just listening deeply to the things you're saying. It's good food for thought. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. Tom is a musician friend of mine here in Ireland. Another, shall we say, anarchist of sorts. And he's a man that has a lot of interesting things to say and a lot of interesting theories, and a very good musician. And me and him see things on a lot of different levels. And I want to talk to you. I want to play one more song now. Would you hang on the phone and we could chat like after the song? Are you about something we talked about the other day?
I'm not going anywhere. I'm listening to you, Tom. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Steve, can you put on the next song, the last Michael Hutchence song, and we'll just play it in memory of him and the band, and it's Rooms for the Memory from the film Dogs in Space.